All right, so we've kind of reached a stopping point on our furring strips, and we're about to tackle the wiring of the overhead lights. And so we've got a little bit more to do because we're sort of doing this whole home automation stuff, and so we have to take that into account when we're going to wire. And so hopefully that'll make things just a little bit more simple. And so what we've defined is we've defined a bunch of zones that we have where the lights can be controlled independently of one another. And so if we had like just a traditional light switch, it would have like 16 switches on it. So that's not very practical. So what we're doing is we are going to run the wiring. So the lights, the way we have them, the way they're controlled, they share a positive. So the positive will kind of be like run all the way down the side of the bus and then branch up. And so all the lights share a positive, and for the negatives, that's how they're controlled. So the negative is what controls when they're on or off, or how bright or dim. They controls how they're dimmed. And so what we've done is we've put little blue tapes where each of the individual lights we think will go, and these are kind of approximate. We'll get a little bit more precision as we sort of build out the roof and stuff, but we need to know about where they are to make the wires. And so because of this illustration, we know that these two go together, so there needs to be one negative cable that joins those two together, because those will be controlled together. These two will be controlled together, these two, and so on, all the way down the bus according to this drawing we've made. And so since they're controlled by the negative, each light that we want to sort of dim and control independent of others has to have its own negative cable. And so the lights are really small. So they're these ones here. They're 3 watts each, so they don't pull, and at 12 volts, so they don't pull a bunch of power. They're maybe less than half an amp each. I think way less than half an amp. We measured them, and we have that in another video, but these are what we went with. And we're also wiring for switches today. So the switches we chose are just little momentary switches, and when you press them, they'll turn the lights on, and then long pressing will dim and stuff like that. We did, if you don't know what I'm talking about, there's a home automation video that we've done that explains sort of where we are with this stuff and how far we've gotten. And so we've chosen to bring everything up here. So right behind the driver's seat will be kind of like the control center for the lights and controlling them, and those manual switches that I talked about that are like the manual override switches, those will go in here. And so most of the lighting stuff will be in here, and then we'll run it throughout the bus. And so we'll have to go up, and that's why we have these kind of slices in our furring strips, is where we need to run a wire across some of these strips. We have provisions for that. And so for the main run, on the positive, we'll be running a 10 gauge wire, which is relatively large, all the way down, and then it will branch up into 14 gauge wires. And so all the individual lights will be wired with 14 gauge wire. And so we've already purchased that, and this is what we'll be using. So we have red and black, and it's marine grade cable, so it's already pre-tinned and sort of designed to be in a moving environment. So it is corrosion resistant, primary wiring, UL listed. So we tried to buy really good wire. We only ever want to do this once, so we're gonna wire it up really well. And these are small enough to fit in here and to not be in the way. So this is what we're going with, and we're gonna start that process today. continuing the wiring. I got tired of like going to get all my tools, so we got an apron. Check it out. So it holds all my tools, and right now it's got wire nuts in it. So we're using these crimpable, they're like wire nuts. You shove all the things in there and then you crimp down, and it makes a nice protective sleeve. And so what we're doing is we're crimping them, and then we're going back through and heat shrinking them just like this. And so this is marine heat shrink, and so it kind of helps the wires to, it acts a little bit like a strain relief, and there's never going to be any water in here, we hope, but if there is, then it kind of waterproofs the wires. Anyway, we're running these wires, and so as we mentioned before, the positives are all kind of in common, and so there's just one big, so this is a 10 gauge, so we have it on a 20 amp circuit. There's a wire coming up through the roof, or through the bottom coming across, and so anywhere we need power, we're running this thing along, and we tap into this to get positive 12 volts. So the lighting itself, the circuits are controlled by the negative, so each thing that we want on its own circuit has to have a negative wire that goes back. And as we'd mentioned before, we have the main sort of control center for the lights will be up behind the driver's seat. So everywhere where we need positive, we'll come in here. We'll put these guys together like this. Let me see if I can get a good grip on these guys. And so we'll kind of start them, we'll twist them a little bit, just enough to get them in the wire nut. And so then we feed them in there. They go in like that. So all the wires are covered. We give them a nice crimp, and then we'll put the heat shrink over them, and that's how we're running the wires. Oh, all right. Okay. All right, so we give them a good crimp, and they should be ready. All right, so now that we've got our main tap coming out, so this will, these aren't really plugged in yet, but this will have 12 volts when it's live. We bring it, and we've got to get power to each of these lights. And so we've got our source wire coming in, and then we'll have a wire that goes to here that will feed this light, and then we need another wire to continue on to the next one, and then we'll do the same thing there, where we'll group 3 together. One will come down and it'll continue along, again 3 here, one will come down and continue along, and so forth until we get all the lights done. So that's how we've been doing. We've just kind of been daisy chaining them all together. And this 14 gauge wire, I mean, these things, when we put them on the amp meter, the lights drew, I think, less than like 0.13 amps or something. So it's very, very small current. We're completely oversized, but that should, that should be better for the lights to be a little bit oversized. So anyway, we're running wires now. We're measuring them all out. We come here, and then we measure them out a little bit, and then we just cut. And we're just doing approximate because when the roof comes in, we're going to do slats on the roof, and the slats are actually going to determine the exact location of the light. And so we're not being crazy accurate. These tapes are just an approximation of where we think they're going to be, but we've got, we've given ourselves a good, maybe 10 inches, so if it ends up over here, we're still okay, or if it ends up over here, it's still okay. So we're trying to give ourselves enough room, but not so much wire that that it's a hassle to deal with. So that's how we're doing this part. Alright, so we've got our wires here, and we're joining them together. This one happens to have 4 wires. This one's a little more than usual. We usually only have 3, but get our wire nut, and then we'll insert them in, and we have to make sure that they go all the way so that we can see the wire at the end. So that didn't work that time. There we go. There. So now we've got our wire all the way in. I can see it at the very end. That's what's nice about these clear ones. So then we'll just take our crimpers and give it a good little crimp. So come here. And I always crimp them twice. I don't know what the rule is on these, but there. Now that wire is in there and it's secure, and I can't pull these out. It's in there really well. Like, these are amazingly strong. So anyway, so now we've got these, and so this one goes to here. We've got a line coming out here which will feed this string, and then we've got our feeder line over here which will continue this string. So all the rest of these should be 3 wires coming out just to feed the rest of these. So we'll continue running these wires. Alright, so we've run the wires, so we've come here and we've daisy chained all these so you can see the little loops. We're just tying loops to just kind of get them out of the way so they don't keep hitting us in the head as we walk by. So anyway, we'll come here, we daisy chain this, daisy chained here, and daisy chained here, and now we'll do the same thing for a lead wire that we brought over here. So these are in essence just all tied together, and so we'll put a thing here, we'll loop here, again here, here, and over there. So we'll run the same kind of configuration on this side, and then they'll all have positive power. And so now we need to run our negative, and so our negative, as we said before, controls our switching. So in our kitchen, we have actually 4 lights. As you see here, there's 4 drops on each side. So there's 4 on the driver's side and 4 on the passenger side, and those are controlled independently. And so we can have these on and these off, or vice versa, or dim these, and these are at full bright, and these will light up kind of like the sort of the cabinet, or I'm sorry, the kitchen area. It'll light up the counter space, and then these are kind of just lighting up as general lighting, and so we can dim them and turn them on independently. And so we need to now run 2 negatives from our switching area into here. So one will come up here and daisy chain this set that's on the driver's side, and the other one will come up here and daisy chain this set, which is in kind of the hall or the main kind of walkway area. So that's what we're going to work on now. We're going to run those wires from the front to the back and then daisy chain them, and then basically the front of the bus will be wired for lights. perfectly for like 200 cuts, and now Alright, so now we're running another wire from the lighting control center up and over, and these all the way over here now. And so this will control this side. So we've already run the black ones over here all the way over there, and now we've run another one here, and this will control these 4 lights on the other side of the kitchen. So we're working on that now. Alright, so we've finished the wiring in the front half of the bus. So we've done all the way through the kitchen. And so all that's left now is these 5 areas in the back. And so we are going to wire them exactly the same as we've been doing these. It's just a little darker back there, so it doesn't record as well. So hopefully that'll go pretty smoothly. Alright, so the last thing we're going to do for today as far as the wiring is run the wires for our switches. So we are going to have 4 switch panels with about 3 to 4 switches each. And we are going to have one by the front door, one near the kitchen, one in the bathroom, and then one in the rear bedroom. So in order to feed those switch panels, all we really need is just a network cable. So this network cable has 8 little wires in it, and for our home automation setup, all it really needs is a signal. So it doesn't need to be like a really strong, it doesn't need to carry a lot of current or a lot of voltage. It just needs enough to say, hey, I've switched on and off. And so a network cable, this is a Cat 6 network cable, should be more than enough to give it back the signal that it needs to turn lights and stuff on and off. So that is the last thing we're doing. We're running, like I said, it's just Cat 6E, and so we'll run it to the door, kitchen, bathroom, and then the rear bedroom, and then that will be it for today. Then the overhead wiring will be complete. Alright, so we just finished up our last couple of wires, and so now we've got runs for all of the overhead lights. So that's finished. We did run out of marine heat shrink, and so we've got that on order. It should be here in a couple days, but we're going to go back through and heat shrink all these. It shouldn't be a big deal. So we're going to do that before we call this finished, but for now, for today, we're going to call it finished. So we're going to move on to the next project.